Every night at exactly 3:17 a.m. something started knocking inside my walls, and when I finally answered, it knocked back from inside my room. I'm not a superstitious person. I never have been. I grew up in a house full of engineers and scientists, people who believed in what they could measure and prove. So when I tell you what happened during the 8 months I lived at 4 Callaway Road, I need you to understand, I tried to explain every single thing away. I tried so hard. Right up until I couldn't anymore. I moved to Harlan County, Kentucky in late September. Not by choice exactly. I'd taken a remote job after a bad breakup, and I needed somewhere cheap, somewhere quiet, somewhere that wasn't the apartment I'd shared with someone who was no longer in my life. A friend of a friend mentioned a rental property outside of town. An old farmhouse. The owner, a man named Gerald Pruitt, lived 2 counties over and managed it through a property management company that seemed to consist entirely of one tired woman named Diane who answered emails 3 days late. The listing photos made the house look charming. Wraparound porch, hardwood floors, big windows. In a different light, a kinder, warmer light, it probably was charming. But when I pulled into the gravel driveway on that gray September afternoon, the trees on either side of the road had already gone bare, and the house sat at the end of a long, narrowing lane like something that had been swallowing the field around it for 100 years. It was built in 1897. The property sheet said so. That's not old by European standards, but out here in this particular patch of Appalachian Hill country, 1897 meant the house had survived things. I had a memory. I told myself I liked that. The first night I slept fine. Dreamlessly. I remember being relieved. The second night I heard the scratching. It was faint. The kind of sound you convince yourself is the house settling, is the wind, is a branch against the siding. It was coming from inside the wall behind my bedroom closet, a dry, papery sound like something dragging itself across insulation. I lay in the dark listening for maybe 20 minutes and then it stopped and I went back to sleep. In the morning I told myself, mice. Old houses had mice. I'd get traps. I got traps. I set them in the crawl space beneath the kitchen, along the baseboards in the hallway behind the washing machine. Over the next 2 weeks I caught exactly nothing. Not a single mouse. Not a spider, not a beetle, not so much as a dust bunny caught against the trigger. The traps sat there, pristine and untouched, while the scratching in the walls continued every night, for exactly as long as it wanted to, and then stopped. I should have paid more attention to that. The stopping. The way it never just faded. It cut off. Cling. Like something deciding to be quiet. The knocking started on October 11th. I know the date because I'd been on a late video call with my team, and I remember looking at the clock on my laptop, 11:48 p.m., and thinking I needed to be in bed. I closed everything down, brushed my teeth, and fell asleep fast. At 3:17 a.m., my eyes opened. I know the time because my phone was on the nightstand face up, and the screen had just lit with a notification. Something from a news app, something I don't even remember, and the glow caught my eye in the dark. 3:17, and then before I could look away, knock. One knock. Single, deliberate. From inside the wall to my left, the wall that separated the bedroom from the hallway. I sat up. The house was completely silent around it. No wind. No settling. No scratching. Just that one knock hanging in the air like a word someone had said and immediately regretted. I stared at the wall for a long time. Nothing happened. Eventually I lay back down and spent the rest of the night with my eyes on the ceiling. The next night, 3:17 a.m. Knock. Knock. 2 this time. Same wall. Same quality of sound, not hollow, not sharp, but somewhere in between. Like a knuckle against something that wasn't quite drywall. Something denser. The night after that, 3 knocks. I started keeping a notebook. I know how that sounds. But when something is happening that you can't explain, your brain needs a place to put it. Writing it down felt like doing something. It felt like being rational. October 13 to 3:17 a.m., 1 knock, left wall. October 14 to 3:17 a.m., 2 knocks, left wall. October 15 to 3:17 a.m., 3 knocks, left wall. October 16 to 3:17 a.m., 3 knocks, left wall, then 1 from the ceiling. That last entry. I didn't sleep again that night. The ceiling knock was different. Higher up, further away, more resonant. Like something in the attic had heard what was happening below and wanted to announce itself. I lay there in the dark thinking about the layout of the house. The attic access was a pull-down ladder in the hallway. I had never opened it. In 2 weeks of living there, it hadn't occurred to me to look up there. Old houses had attics. Attics had boxes, insulation, dead wasps and window frames. There was nothing to look at. I thought about all of that very carefully while I stared at my ceiling and listened to the silence that had swallowed the knock whole. That was the moment everything changed. Here's what I need you to understand about what happened next. I am not an imaginative person. I'm not prone to seeing patterns that aren't there. I work in data analytics. My entire professional life is built around the discipline of distinguishing signal from noise, of refusing to assign meaning to coincidence. So when I tell you that the knocking began to respond to me, I want you to know how long I resisted that interpretation. Weeks. I resisted it for weeks. It started small. I'd be lying awake, waiting for 3:17, because by this point I was always awake at 3:17, my body had calibrated itself to it like a terrible alarm clock, and I'd shift position in bed or cough or set my phone down harder than I meant to, and the knock would come back a half second later. Not from outside the pattern. Not extra. Just the nightly knock, but precisely timed against my movement. I told myself it was coincidence. Then one night I held my breath. Just to see. Just as an experiment. I held it from 3 hours 16 minutes and 50 seconds until I couldn't stand it anymore, and I let it out in a long, slow exhale, and the knock came exactly then. On the exhale. As if whatever was in the wall had been waiting. I sat up very slowly. My heart was hammering. I looked at the wall. I reached over and knocked twice on my nightstand. From inside the wall, 2 knocks. I want to describe to you what it feels like when the world you understand, the measured, rational, explicable world, reveals a seam. A place where it doesn't quite meet itself. Where you can see, just barely, that there is something on the other side of everything you have believed. It doesn't feel like fear, not at first. It feels like vertigo. Like the floor has tilted 1 degree and you can't find level again. I knocked 3 times. 3 came back. I did not knock again that night. November came in cold and mean. The trees were entirely bare now, and the wind off the hill behind the house moved through the yard in long, low rushes that pressed against the windows like something trying to get your attention. I started leaving lights on. Not because I was afraid of the dark, I told myself, but because the power in the house was unreliable and I didn't want to be tripping over boxes in the middle of the night. The truth was the lights had started doing things. Not dramatic things. Not cinematic, chandelier swinging things. Just the kitchen light, flickering for 3 or 4 seconds around midnight. The lamp in my office going out when I was mid-sentence on a work call and coming back on before I could get up to check it. The bathroom light, this one bothered me most, turning on by itself at 2 a.m. Not turning off and on. Just turning on. From dark to lit while I was in bed while no one was in the bathroom. I called an electrician. Nice man named Ray drove out from town, spent 2 hours in the breaker box and under the crawl space. Told me the wiring was old but looked sound. No shorts, no exposed wire, nothing that should be causing irregular behavior. He tightened a few connections, charged me a fair rate and left. That night the bathroom light turned on at 2 a.m. and the kitchen light flickered at midnight. The scratching in the walls had moved. This is the thing that I kept trying not to think about, but it was true. In September it had been behind the bedroom closet, stationary, consistent. By November it was moving. I'd hear it start behind the closet and then, over the course of 10-15 minutes, it would migrate. Down the wall toward the baseboard. Along the baseboard toward the corner. Up the other wall toward the ceiling. As if something were tracing the inside edge of the room. As if it were learning the dimensions. I realized I wasn't alone. I had understood that intellectually for weeks. But there is a difference between understanding something and feeling it settle into your body. Into your hands. Into that specific patch of skin at the back of your neck. One night I was sitting at my desk working late and I heard the scratching begin its circuit of the room. Closet wall, baseboard, far corner, ceiling, and I realized that I wasn't startled. That my body had accepted this as normal. That I had adapted to being tracked. That frightened me more than the knocking ever had. I should have left. I want to be clear about that and I want to be honest about why I didn't. Part of it was stubbornness. Part of it was the lease. Part of it, and this is the part I'm least comfortable admitting, was that something about it had become almost companionable. The nightly knock at 3:17. The response when I knocked back. It had rhythm. It had consistency. And I was alone in a house in the middle of nowhere, 8 months removed from a relationship that had eaten 4 years of my life, and some part of my brain had begun to file this under contact. I know how that sounds, but I want you to understand the psychology of isolation because I think it matters to what happened next. When you are alone enough, your threshold for what counts as company drops. You talk to your houseplants. You narrate your cooking to no one. You lie in the dark at 3:17 in the morning and knock 3 times on your nightstand and listen, with something that is almost anticipation, for the answer in the wall. I should have ignored it. December 2nd. I know the date because it was the first real snow of the season, a thin, provisional cover that turned the fields around the house the color of old paper. I'd been working since 7 in the morning and had eaten nothing but coffee and crackers, and somewhere around 4 in the afternoon I heard it. Footsteps in the attic. Not the knocking. Not the scratching. Footsteps. Slow, spaced, deliberate, the sound of weight being shifted from one foot to the other over old wood. Back and forth, above the hallway, then above the kitchen, then, slowly, unhurriedly, as if this thing had all the time in the world, directly above my head. I stood in my office and I did not move for a long time. The footsteps stopped. I went into the hallway. I looked up at the pull-down attic door. The cord hanging from it was perfectly still. I told myself an animal had gotten in. A raccoon maybe. Something heavy enough to make that sound. I grabbed the cord, pulled, and the ladder came down smoothly and I climbed up into the dark. I don't know exactly what I expected to find. I brought a flashlight, one of those heavy, long ones that feels reassuring just to hold. I stood at the top of the ladder with the beam cutting across the attic space and I looked at everything up there. Blown insulation between the joists, a few cardboard boxes that must have belonged to the previous tenant, the inside of the roof angling down on either side, a bare bulb on a pull chain that I reached out and clicked on. Yellow light filled the space. Nothing was there. No animal. No disturbance in the insulation. No tracks, no droppings, no sign of anything living. The cardboard boxes were dusty and undisturbed. The corners of the attic were empty. But there was something. One thing. A section of the attic floor, a roughly 3-foot square of old boards, near the far end of the space, where the dust had been cleared. Not disturbed. Not scattered. Cleared in a neat perimeter as if something had been sitting there for a long time. Sitting still enough that the dust had simply not settled in that shape. I stared at that clean rectangle for a while. Then I took a photo of it. Then the light clicked off. Not flickered. Clicked. Like a hand pulling a chain. I was at the top of a ladder in a pitch-dark attic with a flashlight that I had apparently forgotten to keep pointed at anything useful, and I fumbled it, and for one terrible second I was in complete darkness, and something knocked. Not from the wall. Not from below. From the floor directly beneath my feet. From inside my bedroom. Directly below me. 3 fast, hard knocks against the ceiling of my room, against the floor of the attic, against the boards 2 inches from where I was standing. I went down that ladder faster than I've moved in my adult life. I hit the hallway floor and shoved the ladder back up and stood there breathing. The knock came again. From my bedroom. From the wall. From inside. Slow this time. Deliberate. Like a greeting. I pushed the bedroom door open. The room was empty. Of course it was empty. The window was closed and latched. The closet door was open and I could see straight back to the bare wall. Nothing was there. The lamp on my nightstand was on, though I was certain I'd turned it off when I went down to work that morning. The notebook on the bed, my notebook, the one I'd been keeping since October, was open to a page I hadn't written on yet. I hadn't left it open. I'd snapped it shut the night before and put it on the nightstand. I walked in slowly and looked at the open page. Blank. Just lined paper. I turned back through the pages to my most recent entry. NOV 30th, 3:17 a.m. Knocking. 4 sets of 3. Moved along ceiling toward east wall. Scratching after. Stopped at 3:52. The page after that was also blank. Except in the margin, very small, in a handwriting that was not mine, that did not resemble mine, that used a pressure and angle I did not recognize, were 2 words. Still here. I stood in my bedroom holding that notebook for a long time. Then I heard the scratching begin. Behind the closet wall. Slow. Patient. Starting its nightly circuit of the room. And I understood, in the way you understand something that bypasses language and goes straight into the body, that whatever this was, it had been watching me keep that notebook. It had been following the record I was making of it, and it had wanted me to know that. I packed a bag that night. I didn't decide to leave exactly, my body decided and I followed. I took my laptop, my medication, a week of clothes, and my notebook. I put everything in my car. I sat behind the wheel in the driveway with the engine running and the heat on, and I looked back at the house. Every window was dark except one. My bedroom window. The lamp I had found on was on again, or still on, though I had turned it off when I left the room. The light moved, dimmed and brightened in a slow pulse, and I thought about the electrical report that had found nothing wrong. I thought about the notebook. I thought about the clean rectangle in the attic dust. I pulled out of the driveway. I drove 2 hours to a motel outside Lexington and checked in under the parking lot fluorescence at just past midnight. At 3:17 a.m. I woke from a dead sleep. The room was silent. My phone on the nightstand said 317. I lay there in the motel bed, the generic comforter, the aggressive air conditioning unit, the parking lot light bleeding orange through the curtain seam, and I waited. At 3:18 nothing happened. I started to breathe again. And then, from inside the wall beside the bed, that identical flat, dense sound, not hollow, not sharp, from that not quite drywall distance. One knock. I moved 3 more times over the following months. Nashville. Then Columbus. Then back west to a suburb of St. Louis where my sister lives, where I am now writing this. I live in a 3rd-floor apartment. There are no walls that border an exterior. There is no attic above me, no crawl space below. The knocking doesn't happen every night now. Just some nights. Just at 3:17. Just once, always once, from whatever wall is to my left, whichever direction I'm facing when I lie down, the wall on my left is the one it chooses. I've started sleeping in the center of the room, as far from the walls as I can get. I've turned the notebook I was keeping into something like a log, recording each occurrence. The entries have become shorter over time. There isn't much new to say. Last night I reached over and knocked once on the floor beside my mattress. I don't know why I did it. Muscle memory maybe. The habit of all those months. The strange, awful comfort of the ritual. The wall knocked back. I closed my eyes. I lay very still. And in the specific quality of silence that followed, I understood something that I had been avoiding understanding for a long time. Whatever it is, it did not stay in the house on Callaway Road. It didn't follow me here. It was never in the house at all. Don't knock back. Whatever you do, don't knock back. I heard my own voice calling me from the kitchen, but I was home alone, and I hadn't spoken. Let me back up. This was March of last year. I just moved into a house in Dayton, Ohio, one of those cookie-cutter suburban places with beige carpets and a garage that smells like motor oil and old leaves. Detached neighborhood. Quiet street. The kind of place where nothing is supposed to happen. I worked from home, so I was there constantly. Alone mostly. My girlfriend, Dana, was 3 states away finishing up her master's program. We'd text throughout the day. My mom would call on Sundays. Other than that, it was just me, my laptop, and the particular silence that settles into a house when only one person lives there. That silence, I would learn, was not empty. The first thing I noticed was the refrigerator. Or rather, what happened near it. It was a Tuesday. I was sitting at my desk in the spare bedroom I'd converted into an office, deep in a spreadsheet, when I heard, clearly, unmistakably, the sound of the refrigerator opening. That little pressurized thunk of the magnetic seal releasing. Then nothing. No footsteps approaching it. No rustling of shelves. Just the sound hanging in the air and then silence again. I sat very still. Then I got up, walked to the kitchen, and the refrigerator was closed. Exactly as I'd left it. The room was empty. I told myself the seal had slipped. Houses breathe, right? Old appliances make sounds. I went back to my spreadsheet. But I didn't forget it. The second thing happened 3 nights later. I was in bed, somewhere between awake and asleep, that murky, cotton-brained place where sounds feel louder than they should. I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my bedroom door. Slow, deliberate, heel to toe. I jerked upright, stared at the strip of dark beneath the door. Nothing moved through the light. The footsteps had stopped. Stopped exactly where someone would stop if they were standing directly on the other side. I sat there for 11 minutes. I counted. I had my phone in my hand, the flashlight app 1 tap away, thumb trembling over the screen. Eventually I got up, yanked the door open. Empty hallway. Empty house. Every window locked. Every door shut. I checked the whole place. Under beds, inside closets, behind shower curtains. Nothing. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. Now here's where I need you to understand something. I'm not a superstitious person. I don't believe in ghosts. I grew up in a family where everything had an explanation, and if you couldn't find the explanation, you just hadn't looked hard enough. I'm telling you this because what comes next, I need you to believe that I exhausted every rational explanation before I arrived at the conclusion that what was in my house with me was not a ghost. It was something that learned. The whispering started in week 2. The first time I was in the shower. I heard something beneath the sound of the water, not words, not yet, just shape. A murmur. A cadence. Like someone speaking in the next room, too low to make out. I shut the water off and stood there dripping. Silence. The second time I was asleep. It woke me at 3:14 a.m. I checked, and it was closer this time. Close enough that I could almost make out syllables. A voice threading itself through the dark. Soft. Patient. Like it was practicing. Then my phone started doing things. I had a Samsung at the time. Newer model, no issues before this. But starting in week 2, it would wake itself up at odd hours. I'd hear the screen light click on, that faint electronic shimmer, and when I'd roll over to look, the screen would be showing my recent calls. Just sitting there. My call history lit up, no explanation. My own number appeared in the list once. I don't mean a contact saved under my name. I mean my actual number, the number attached to the phone I was holding, had apparently called itself. At 3:22 a.m. on a Thursday I had no memory of. I factory reset the phone. It happened again a week later. The TV was next. It was a flat screen I'd mounted on the bedroom wall. One night I woke to the sound of it, not full volume, just barely audible, like someone had turned it to the lowest possible setting so it would take me a moment to realize it was on. I sat up and it was showing the local news. No sound. Just the anchor's mouth moving, silent, the chirrun scrolling beneath. I hadn't had the TV on in 2 days. I unplugged it. Went back to sleep. Woke up 4 hours later to the sound of static. It was on again. Plugged into nothing. I called Dana that night. Told her some of it, not all of it, because I didn't want to sound like I was losing my mind. She listened and she said, "Maybe you're just stressed, babe. New house. Working alone all day." She said it gently. She wasn't wrong to say it. I almost believed her. Then came the night the voice said my name. March 28th. I remember because I'd just gotten off a call with my mom, Sunday call, right on schedule. We talked for maybe 40 minutes and I'd gone to the kitchen to make tea, and I was standing at the stove watching the kettle when I heard it. My mother's voice. From the hallway. She said my name. Just my name. Exactly the way she says it, that particular note of warmth and impatience she's had since I was 12, that specific rhythm she puts on the second syllable. Daniel. Not Dan. Not Danny. Daniel. My phone was on the counter. The call had ended 30 minutes ago. I didn't move for a long time. Then I walked to the hallway. I turned the light on. Empty. I walked the entire house, light on in every room. Nothing. No one. I called my mom back. She was fine. She was watching TV. She hadn't called me. That was the first night I slept with all the lights on. But here's the thing about whatever was in that house, and this is the part that still makes me sick to think about. It wasn't just mimicking. It was studying me. Because the next day it got specific. I was at my desk. Working. I had my headphones on, no music, just blocking out ambient noise. And I heard myself say, I heard my own voice say, "I should make coffee." Which was exactly what I had been thinking. I yanked my headphones off. I hadn't spoken. I knew I hadn't spoken. My mouth had been closed. But the voice had come from somewhere behind me, from the direction of the closet door at the far end of the office. I sat very still. And then my voice said, "Don't turn around." I turned around. The closet was closed. The room was empty. But the air felt different. Thick. Like the moment before a thunderstorm when the pressure drops and your ears pop. I left the house. Got in my car and drove to a diner 6 miles away and sat in a booth for 3 hours drinking bad coffee and staring at nothing. I called Dana. I told her everything this time. "Come stay with me," she said immediately. "I can't," I said. "I have a lease. I have work." "Daniel," she said. And the way she said my name sent ice straight through me because for just a half second, for the smallest, thinnest sliver of a moment, it didn't sound like her. I told myself it was the phone connection. I drove back to the house. That night, I decided I was going to end it. I don't know what I thought I was going to do exactly. Confront it. Demand answers. Prove to myself it was a carbon monoxide leak or an intruder or a medical episode, anything with a name I could look up. I sat in the kitchen with all the lights on at midnight. I waited. At 1:06 a.m., I heard footsteps descending from upstairs. Slow. That same heel-to-toe deliberateness. Down the stairs, across the entryway, stopping just outside the kitchen doorway. I stood up. I said, "I know you're there." And my voice said from the doorway, perfectly, exactly, every inflection matched like a recording, "I know you're there." My stomach dropped. I said, "What are you?" My voice said, "What are you?" I said, "Stop it." My voice said, "Stop it." I crossed the kitchen. Every step feeling like it took a full minute. I reached the doorway and looked into the entryway and there was nothing there. Just the dark entryway, the front door, the bottom of the stairs. But I could feel it. The way you can feel someone standing behind you in a dark room. That pressure. That attention. I said very quietly, "Show yourself." And from somewhere, from everywhere, from the walls, my own voice said, "I already have." I don't remember the rest of that night clearly. I woke up on the kitchen floor at 6 a.m. The sun was coming through the windows. Everything looked completely normal. My tea mug from the night before was washed and placed neatly in the drying rack. I had not washed it. I was out of that house in 4 days. Broke my lease. Lost my deposit. Didn't care. Here's what I've thought about every single day since. Dana came to help me move. She drove up, we packed everything in a day, she was with me the whole time. At one point she went to get boxes from the garage and I was alone in the office for maybe 10 minutes. In those 10 minutes, I heard her voice from downstairs. She said, "Daniel, come help me with this." I went downstairs. She was still in the garage. She hadn't called me. She said she hadn't said anything. She looked at me with this expression I'd never seen from her before, not scared, not exactly. More like cautious. The way you look at someone you're not entirely sure you recognize anymore. She didn't say anything about it. We loaded the truck and we drove away and I watched that house disappear in the side mirror. I think about that expression she gave me a lot. I think about the fact that it waited until I was leaving to use her voice one last time. Like it wanted me to know it could do her too. Like it was telling me something I still haven't fully worked out. Or maybe, and this is the thought I can't sit with for long, maybe it wasn't warning me at all. Maybe it was saying goodbye. This one isn't mine. It belongs to my cousin Rachel, and she told me this in pieces over the course of about 4 months, because it took her that long to accept what she'd actually experienced. Rachel lives in a suburb outside of Memphis. She and her husband, Greg, bought their house in 2019, a 2-story colonial good school district, the whole thing. Their son, Maddie, was born in 2021. By the time Rachel told me any of this, Maddie was almost 2. The baby monitor was one of those high-end video ones. Camera on Maddie's dresser, screen on Rachel's nightstand, night vision, the works. She watched it obsessively the way first-time parents do, lying in the dark squinting at the green-tinted image of her son's little chest rising and falling. It started with the audio. The monitor picked up not just Maddie's room but, on nights when the house was especially quiet, ambient sound from the hallway. A creak. An air vent. Normal things. Rachel had gotten used to filtering them out. One night in February she woke to a sound from the monitor that she described as someone softly reading aloud. A voice. Oh, patient. Like a parent reading a bedtime story. She sat up. On the video screen, Maddie was asleep. So, the room was dark and empty. But the voice continued for another 11 seconds before it stopped. Greg slept through it. She didn't wake him. She checked the app, checked for wireless interference, went through everything she could think of. No explanation. The next night, she left her own phone recording in Maddie's room while they slept. In the morning, she found 43 minutes of audio. The first 41 minutes were silence and white noise. The last 2 minutes were a voice, low, androgynous, just below clear comprehension, speaking in a steady, unhurried rhythm. She played it for me when she told me this story. I listened to the whole 2 minutes. I still can't tell you what language it was, if it was any language at all. It sounded like language the way a shadow looks like a person. The shape is right, but something essential is missing. And right at the end, in the last 5 seconds, the voice changed. Sounded like Maddie. 18-month-old Maddie, who at the time could say maybe 12 words. This voice was using those words. Cycling through them in the dark in his own room while he slept. Mama. More. No. Mama. More. No. Over and over until the recording ended. Rachel pulled the monitor from Maddie's room the next morning. 3 nights later, Maddie woke at 2 a.m. screaming. Rachel ran to his room, grabbed him, held him. He was trembling. He kept pointing at the closet. She opened the closet. Clothes. A stack of extra blankets. Maddie stared at the open closet for a long moment. Then he looked at Rachel and he said, very clearly, a full sentence, the most complex thing she'd ever heard him say, "It talks like me." He was 18 months old. He never said it again. When she asked him about it later, he had no idea what she was talking about. He didn't have the words for it anymore. Like the sentence had moved through him from somewhere else, used his mouth and left. She told me Greg thought she was losing it. She told me she spent 3 weeks believing him. Then one evening Greg came in from work. Rachel was in the kitchen. Maddie was playing in the living room. Greg was upstairs changing out of his work clothes. Rachel heard Greg's voice from upstairs say, "Hey, can you bring me a water?" She filled a glass. She carried it upstairs. Greg was sitting on the edge of the bed, his back to the door, and when she came in he turned around with the expression of someone who's just seen something that rearranged his understanding of the world. "I was just about to ask you for a water," he said. "You did ask," she said. "Rachel," he said. I hadn't said anything yet. They sold the house 8 months later. They told the realtor it was for work. They told the new owners nothing because what would you even say? Rachel told me she sometimes wonders late at night whether what was in that house is still there. Whether the new family has a baby monitor. Whether something is in the dark in that closet, patient and still, running through its collection. Learning new voices. Practicing. This one I debated including. I'm including it because I think it's important. I think it might be the most important one. A man I'll call James, he asked me not to use his name, reached out to me 6 weeks ago through a mutual friend. He'd heard me talk about my experience in Dayton and he said he needed to tell me something. We got on a call. He talked for 2 hours. James is 41. He lived alone in a house in a suburb of St. Louis. He worked nights, security guard at a warehouse. So he'd get home around 6 a.m., sleep through the morning, wake up early afternoon. He started experiencing things similar to what I've described. Footsteps. His own voice. The TV. He thought it was sleep deprivation from the night schedule, a completely reasonable conclusion. But James was methodical. He was the kind of person who kept a notebook. So he started logging everything. Date, time, description. He told me he filled 47 pages over 3 months. On page 12, he noted that the voice, his voice coming from other rooms, seemed to be speaking in slightly delayed reaction to his thoughts. Like a second or two after he'd think something, he'd hear himself say it from down the hall. On page 28, he noted that the delay was getting shorter. On page 39, he noted that there was no longer a delay. That his voice was saying things before he thought them. That last part stayed with him for a long time. He told me he'd sit in total stillness, trying not to think, and hear his own voice in the hallway saying the thought he hadn't had yet, and then a second later he would think it, helplessly, like an echo going the wrong direction. On page 45, he wrote something that made the call go very quiet between us. He wrote, "I'm not sure which one of us is the original anymore." The last entry in the notebook was 2 weeks before he called me. He'd been sitting in his kitchen. He said he'd spent the whole night not sleeping, just sitting there because he was afraid that if he closed his eyes, something would shift. Something would settle. He didn't know how to explain it better than that. At 4:51 a.m., he heard his front door open. His front door, which was dead-bolted. He heard footsteps cross the entryway. Pause at the kitchen doorway. He turned around. He told me there was nothing there. He told me he picked up his phone and called his brother. His brother answered on the third ring, groggy, irritated, said, "James, it's 5 a.m, what?" And James said, "I need you to listen to me and I need you to tell me who I sound like." His brother was quiet for a moment. Then, "What kind of question is that? You sound like you." James said, "Are you sure?" Another pause. Longer this time. "James," his brother said, "is everything okay?" And James told me, and this is the part that ended the 2 hours of conversation, the part that made me sit there in my own home in the dark afterward. He told me that he didn't answer his brother. That he held the phone to his ear and he opened his mouth, and he waited to see what came out. And whatever he heard himself say, he never told me what it was. He just said, "I don't think I'm alone in here anymore." And then he said he had to go. And that was the end of the call. The mutual friend who connected us told me last week that James doesn't return calls anymore. That when she drives by his house, the lights are on at all hours. That she knocked once and heard movement inside, but no one came to the door. Just the sound of someone moving quietly through rooms. And once, just once, she said she heard something from inside the house. She said it sounded like a voice. She said it sounded like James. But it was saying things in a way James never would. Small wrong things. The rhythm was off, the word choices strange, like someone doing a very good impression of a person they'd mostly figured out. She knocked again. The movement inside stopped. Then the voice said through the door very softly, "I'll be right there." She left. She didn't go back. If something in your house doesn't feel right, if the silences feel full, if familiar voices come from impossible places, I want you to remember one thing. Whatever it is in there with you, it's been listening longer than you know, and it's very, very good at what it does. At 2:43 a.m., every device in my house turned on at the same time, and none of them were plugged in. I know how that sounds. I know. But I'm asking you to stay with me because what happened in that house over the next 6 days changed something in me, something I don't think I'll ever get back. My name is Daniel Marsh. I'm 31 years old. I work in logistics, I don't believe in ghosts, and until March of last year, I slept like a rock every single night of my life. Then I inherited my great-uncle's house in Harlan County, Kentucky. The house was built in 1941. My great-uncle, Raymond Marsh, had lived there alone for the last 40 years of his life. He had no wife, no children, no close friends that anyone could name. When the county finally broke in after a neighbor reported the smell, they found him in the kitchen, sitting upright in a wooden chair facing the wall. The coroner said he'd been dead for 11 days. The chair was facing a blank wall. Not a window. Not a door. Just the wall. I didn't know Raymond well. I'd met him twice as a child, and both times he'd unsettled me in a way I couldn't articulate. The way he'd go quiet mid-sentence and tilt his head toward the ceiling, like he was listening to something just above the frequency of human hearing. My mother used to say Raymond had the sensitivity. She never explained what that meant. I should have asked. I drove down on a Friday in early March with a moving truck, a box of cleaning supplies, and the kind of optimism that only comes from never having made a truly catastrophic mistake. The plan was simple. Spend a week cleaning the place up, decide if it was worth keeping or selling, and be home by the following weekend. The house sat at the end of a gravel road, half a mile from the nearest paved street. It was surrounded by old-growth oak trees so dense they formed a canopy that blocked the afternoon sun entirely, leaving the yard in a cold, greenish twilight even at 3 in the afternoon. The house itself was large, 2 stories, white clapboard siding gone gray with weather, a wraparound porch that sagged on the eastern end, 8 rooms total. It smelled inside of old wood and something sweeter underneath, something I couldn't identify. Not unpleasant. Almost like ozone, like the air before a lightning strike. The electricity was on. I'd had the county utility service reconnected before I arrived. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that the electricity in that house had never really been off. The first thing happened on Friday night. My first night there. I'd spent the afternoon cleaning, unpacking a sleeping bag and a folding cot, setting up my laptop in the kitchen where the table was, making the space livable. By 10 p.m. I was exhausted and I turned everything off. The single floor lamp I'd brought, my laptop, the overhead kitchen light, and went to bed on the cot in what had been Raymond's bedroom. I woke up at 2:43 a.m. I know the time because I looked at my phone immediately. Every light in the house was on. Not the lamp I'd brought. Not the kitchen overhead. Those were on too, but what stopped my blood cold was the other lights. The fixtures in rooms I hadn't touched, the ceiling light in the upstairs hallway, the bare bulb in the basement stairwell, the ancient sconce in the dining room with its cracked amber shade, all of them blazing all at once, filling the house with this flat, humming yellow light. I stood in the bedroom doorway and I listened. Nothing. No sound except the low electrical hum of the bulbs. I told myself there'd been a power surge. Some kind of grid fluctuation that had tripped everything on simultaneously. I walked through the house and turned off every switch I could find. I went back to bed. At 2:43 a.m. the following morning, it happened again. Every light. All at once. Same time. I checked my phone to be sure. 2:43, exact. I'm a rational person. I want to be clear about that because I know what this sounds like, and I want you to understand that I fought hard against the obvious conclusion. I spent Saturday investigating. I checked the breaker panel, an old fuse box in the basement, the kind with the glass fuses you can actually see through. Every fuse was intact. No signs of overload, no burned contacts, no wiring that could explain a synchronized activation of every circuit simultaneously. I called an electrician. He came out Saturday afternoon, spent 2 hours in the basement and the attic crawl space, and came back down with a look on his face that I didn't know how to read. Wiring's old, he said. Knob and tube throughout the upper floor. You'll want to replace it eventually. But I can't find anything that would cause what you're describing. He paused. Nothing that should cause it anyway? What do you mean should? He thought about it. There's a ground somewhere in this house that I can't locate. Something's completing a circuit that I can't find the source for. He looked up at the ceiling. It's like the house has its own current, independent of what's coming in from the line. He left. He didn't offer to come back. That night, I moved my cot to the kitchen closer to the door. I lay there with the lights off and waited. 2:43 a.m. Every light. All at once. But this time, when I walked into the living room, the television was on. There was no television in the house when I'd arrived. I want to be absolutely precise about this. I had checked every room on Friday. The living room contained a couch, a wooden rocking chair, an empty bookshelf, and a stone fireplace. No television. No television stand. No cable connections or antenna. There was a television in the living room now. It was an old set, a Zenith console model from what looked like the late 1960s, the kind with the wooden cabinet and the rounded screen, sitting on 4 legs like a piece of furniture. The screen was on. It was showing static, that white-gray fizzing snowstorm you don't see anymore now that everything's digital, and the sound was turned up, a loud hiss that filled the room. I stood in the doorway for a long time. Then I walked toward it. My heart was doing something irregular. My hands were open at my sides, the way your body prepares for something without telling your brain. I reached for the channel dial. It had a physical dial with click stops for each channel, and turned it. The static shifted but didn't resolve. I turned it again. More static. I reached for the power button. The television turned off on its own before I could touch it. The room went dark except for the light coming in from the hallway. And in the silence, in the half-dark, I heard something. The microwave in the kitchen beeped. One long, single beep. Like something had just finished cooking. I did not sleep again that night. I sat in the kitchen with every light I controlled turned on, my laptop open, and I started researching Raymond Marsh. What I found was thin. He'd been a coal miner until 1978, when he'd taken an early retirement that nobody in the county could explain on his salary. After that, nothing. No employment records, no tax filings I could access, no civic memberships, no newspaper mentions except a single letter to the editor of the local paper in 1989. I found the letter on a digitized archive site. It was 3 paragraphs long. Raymond had written to complain about a proposed cell tower installation 2 miles from his property. His objection wasn't visual. It wasn't about property values. He wrote, "There are frequencies in this county that have been unoccupied since the land was first settled, and they are unoccupied for good reason. To introduce new signals into this spectrum without understanding what already exists within it is not progress. It is provocation." The paper had run a brief editorial note beneath the letter. Mr. Marsh's concerns, while colorfully expressed, fall outside the scope of FCC regulatory review. I read the letter 3 times. Frequencies that have already been occupied. At 6 a.m., the radio on the kitchen counter turned on. I hadn't noticed the radio before. It was small, a cream-colored AM/FM unit that had been pushed to the back of the counter behind a coffee maker. The dial lit up orange. The speaker crackled. And then, very clearly, through the static, I heard a voice say my name. Daniel. One word. My name. In a voice I didn't recognize. Low, uninflected, perfectly calm, the way a voice sounds when it's been recorded rather than spoken live. I knocked the radio off the counter. It hit the tile floor and the orange dial went dark and the voice stopped. I stood there breathing. Then I picked the radio back up. The back panel had cracked in the fall, and I could see the battery compartment through the crack. It was empty. No batteries. No cord plugged into the wall. I put the radio on the table and sat down across from it. My hands were shaking. I was looking at an unpowered device that had just said my name. I thought about leaving. I want to be honest, I thought seriously about packing my sleeping bag, getting in the truck, and never coming back. But I didn't. And I've spent a long time since then trying to understand why I didn't, and the only answer I've been able to come up with is this. The house didn't feel threatening. Not yet. It felt curious. It felt like something that was noticing me. I stayed because some part of me wanted to notice it back. That was my mistake. Sunday passed in a state of hypervigilance that was exhausting and strangely clarifying. I cataloged everything. I kept notes on my phone with timestamps. 9:17 a.m. The kitchen overhead light flickered 3 times in rapid succession. Not a brownout pattern. 3 distinct pulses. 11:42 a.m. The front door deadbolt unlocked itself. I was standing 6 feet away watching it. The bolt simply retracted into the door. I relocked it. At 11:44, it unlocked again. 2:15 p.m., I was eating lunch at the kitchen table when the microwave started. I hadn't touched it. The display read 3 o'clock and it began counting down. When it reached 0, it beeped once and stopped. I opened the door. Empty. 4:58 p.m., every door in the house swung open simultaneously. All of them. Bedroom, bathroom, closets, the basement door. Every door in the house opened at once like a single exhalation. Then slowly they closed, one by one, starting from the top floor and moving down. The basement door was last. I noticed something during the door event that I didn't write down at the time because I wasn't sure I'd actually seen it. When the doors were all open simultaneously, there was a pressure change. I felt it in my ears like descending in an airplane. And for just a moment, a fraction of a second, I felt like I was being looked at. Not watched. Looked at. The way you feel when someone in a crowd turns and finds your face specifically. That night the television came back. Same position in the living room. Same zenith console. I'd pushed it against the wall after the night before and marked its position on the floor with tape, just to be scientific about it. It was in the exact same position. The tape marks aligned perfectly. This time it wasn't showing static. It was showing a room. Specifically, it was showing the kitchen. My kitchen. From an angle that suggested the camera, if there was a camera, was positioned near the ceiling in the corner above the refrigerator. I could see my folding table, my laptop, my coffee mug, the yellow legal pad I'd been taking notes on. I was not in the frame. I was standing in the living room looking at the screen. I walked into the kitchen. I looked up at the corner above the refrigerator. Nothing. No camera. No device. Bare plaster. I walked back to the living room. The television was still showing the kitchen. The coffee mug was slightly steaming. The legal pad was there. My chair was empty. I watched the screen for 30 seconds. Nothing moved in the kitchen feed. Then something moved at the edge of the frame. Just barely. Just at the periphery of the image, near the basement door. A shadow. Something dark, shifting, pulling back from the door frame like it had leaned in to look and then retreated. I ran to the kitchen. The basement door was closed. Locked. I stood there with my hand on the knob and I made myself breathe steadily and I did not open it. I stood there for a long time. And then I heard from the other side of the door, very softly, what sounded like a radio. Playing my name on a loop. Daniel. 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 Monday. Day 3. I called my friend Marcus, who is a photographer and does not frighten easily, and I asked him to come down. I didn't tell him everything on the phone, just that the house was behaving strangely and that I needed a witness. He arrived Monday evening with his camera bag and a 6-pack of beer and the easy skepticism of someone who has never needed to be afraid of anything. By midnight he was a different person. The lights cycled 3 times while we were sitting in the living room, on, off, at intervals of exactly 90 seconds. The microwave counted down from 3 minutes starting at 11:33 p.m. and beeped at 11:36 p.m. The front door unlocked twice. At 11:58 p.m., the television came on. It showed static for about 20 seconds. Then the static began to resolve. Not into a channel, not into programming, but into something that looked like handwriting. Like someone was pressing a finger against the inside of the screen and writing. One letter at a time. Then E, then Y, then M. Marcus was filming. His hands were shaking badly enough that the footage would later be nearly unusable, but you could make out the screen. You could make out the letters. ROMOND. And then below that, STILLHERE. Marcus was the one who said it out loud, "That's your uncle's name. Raymond's still here." The television clicked off. Absolute silence and darkness for 3 seconds. Then every light in the house came on at once. And from everywhere, from the walls, from the vents, from the floors, from the radio in the kitchen, from the microwave, from speakers that didn't exist, a sound filled the house. Not words, not static, not white noise. A frequency. A specific, sustained, impossible tone. It was the same frequency from Raymond's letter. I couldn't have told you that in the moment. I know it now because I've had time to think about what Raymond understood that the rest of us didn't. There are things that live in the spaces between signals. And Raymond had spent 40 years in that house feeding them. We left. Marcus and I got in my truck at 12:17 a.m. and drove down the gravel road and didn't stop until we hit the highway. We didn't speak for the first 20 minutes. Then Marcus said, "The camera." "What?" "I left my camera in the house." He paused. "The one that was recording." We looked at each other. We didn't go back. 3 weeks later, I hired a property management company to handle the listing. The agent who went to photograph the house called me after the first visit. She sounded careful and controlled and professional, the way people sound when they're working hard at not sounding frightened. She said the house showed well. Good bones. Original hardwood throughout. She said there was one odd thing. Minor, probably nothing. She'd taken photographs of the living room and in every single shot, there was something in the corner of the frame she couldn't account for. A reflection maybe, or a lens artifact. It looked, she said, like a man sitting in a rocking chair, watching the camera. The house sold in April. I signed the paperwork remotely. I never went back. But here's the thing I haven't told anyone. The week after the sale closed, my phone rang at 2:43 a.m. Unknown number. I answered it. Static. Long static. And then, from somewhere underneath the static, a sound I'd heard before in a house 300 miles away. A radio playing softly, tuned to a frequency that doesn't exist on any dial. I hung up. My phone rang again immediately. I turned it off. I held it in both hands in the dark and sat there until the sun came up. I have never answered an unknown call since. And sometimes, late at night, when my apartment is quiet and I'm on the edge of sleep, I hear it, just beneath the threshold of sound, just below the frequency of silence. The tone. Sustained and specific and patient. Like something that knows exactly where I am. like something that has always known. And it is waiting for me to stop being afraid of it. Because whatever Raymond invited into that house, whatever learned to speak through static and television screens and the bones of old appliances, it isn't bound to a house. It never was. If you've had an experience you can't explain, something that felt like it was looking back, I want to hear it. Leave it in the comments below. Stay safe tonight. And whatever you do, don't answer. I want to be clear about something before I start. I am not the kind of person who scares easily. I grew up in rural West Virginia. I've worked night shifts in warehouses, walked home alone at 2 in the morning, slept in my car on the side of the highway when I ran out of gas on a road trip. None of it ever really got to me. So when I tell you what happened in that house, what I found, what found me, I need you to understand that I mean every single word. The house was on Merton Road in a small town in central Ohio. An old Victorian built sometime in the late 1880s based on the county records, though the realtor was vague about it, and that way realtors get when they know something and don't want to say it. 3 stories, a basement, original hardwood floors that groaned like something was always just waking up beneath them. I bought it in March of last year. It was cheap. Not suspiciously cheap, just within my budget cheap, the way old houses in small towns can be when nobody much wants to live there anymore. The first week was fine. Normal first week in a new house things. Figuring out which light switches did what, learning that the back door needed to be lifted slightly before you turn the key, discovering that the water pressure in the second floor bathroom was inconsistent in a way that made showering feel like a negotiation. Nothing alarming. Nothing strange. The first strange thing happened on a Tuesday. I remember that specifically because I had leftovers from Monday in the fridge, and I came home that Tuesday expecting to eat them. They were exactly where I'd left them. But the smell in the kitchen was different. Not the smell of my food. Something underneath it. Something older. Like soil after a long rain, or a room that's been closed too long. I stood in the kitchen for almost 2 minutes just trying to place it. Then it faded and I ate my dinner, and I told myself that old houses smell like old houses. But that smell came back. Not every day. Once every few days, always faintly, always from a different part of the house. Sometimes the kitchen. Sometimes the hallway outside the second bedroom. Once, very distinctly, from behind the wall in the living room, the long interior wall that ran parallel to the staircase. That one bothered me. Not because it was stronger, but because there was nothing on the other side of that wall except, presumably, insulation and old wood framing. No pipes. No reason for a smell to concentrate there. I put it down to the house settling. To moisture. To the history of a building that was older than my grandparents. I had a contractor friend, Marcus, and I texted him about it. He said old houses breathe, that the smell was probably just dead air pockets releasing. I accepted that. I moved on. But I started noticing other things. There's a specific kind of unease that comes not from one big thing but from a dozen tiny things that don't add up. It's not fear exactly. It's more like the feeling of a math problem where you keep getting a slightly wrong answer. Not wrong enough to know where you went wrong, just wrong enough that you keep going back to it. The first small detail, my keys. I kept them on a hook by the front door. A very deliberate habit I've maintained for years to avoid losing them. About 3 weeks after moving in, I came home to find the hook empty. The keys were on the kitchen counter. I assumed I'd been distracted that morning and left them there. A few days later, same thing. Keys on the counter. I checked my own memory carefully. I was almost certain, not quite certain, but almost, that I'd hung them up. The second small detail, the chair. I had a reading chair in the second bedroom, angled toward the window, a position I'd deliberately chosen for the light. I came upstairs one evening and the chair was facing the door instead. Just slightly. Maybe 20 degrees. Not dramatically repositioned. You could almost explain it away as having always been that way, if you hadn't been the one who placed it. I didn't touch the chair. I stood in the doorway for a long time looking at it. Then I went and ate dinner and watched television and did not think about it. That was a choice I made consciously, to not think about it, because thinking about it led somewhere I wasn't prepared to go yet. The third detail was the sound. Not a dramatic sound, no banging, no crashes, no footsteps in the night. Something subtler. A low, intermittent sound, almost like slow breathing coming from the walls. I would hear it late at night, lying in bed, and it would take me a long time to fall asleep. I told myself it was the house. The pipes. The wood contracting in the cold. I told myself many things. The fourth detail was the smell returning, stronger now and specifically, unmistakably, from that interior wall in the living room. I pressed my face close to the baseboard one night and inhaled. The smell was organic. Animal. The way a space smells when something warm has been inside it. That's when I realized something was wrong. I started examining the living room wall on a Saturday afternoon in April. Daylight, coffee in hand. The reasonable, measured approach of a person who is not going to let an old house get the better of them. I ran my hand along the wallpaper, original, I think, faded blue flowers on a cream background, and pressed lightly every foot or so, listening for the change in sound that would indicate a hollow space. The whole wall sounded hollow. Old construction. But there was a section, roughly 4 feet wide and about 6 feet tall, where the hollow sound was different. Deeper. Not hollow because there's a cavity hollow, hollow because there's a large empty space hollow. A substantial empty space. I pulled back the edge of the wallpaper at the corner of this section and found wood underneath. Not the drywall or plaster I expected, but actual wood paneling, smoother than the surrounding wall and with a faint seam running down one side that looked deliberate. My heart was beating faster. I don't want to pretend it wasn't. I found the latch by accident. A small recessed lever disguised as a nail head, about shoulder height, so flush with the surface that I only found it because my thumbnail snagged on its edge while I was running my hand across the wood. I pressed it. There was a sound, a dry mechanical click, the sound of something long unpressed being pressed, and the wood panel shifted inward slightly, releasing a thin line of darkness along its right edge. The smell hit me immediately. Strong now, much stronger than it had been through the wall. Soil and something metallic and something else I still don't have a good word for. Not rot. Not decay. Something living. I did not open it further that day. I stood there with my fingertips on the panel, the thin line of dark air against my face, and I made a deliberate decision to close it again. I told myself I needed a flashlight. I told myself I needed to call Marcus. I told myself I needed to look up the house records first, understand the structure, know what I was walking into. I told myself many things that I believed less and less with each passing minute. The real reason I closed it was simpler. In the brief moment the panel had shifted open, in the first second before I consciously processed anything, I had heard something. A very quiet, very subtle shift of weight in the darkness. Like the rearrangement of something that had been perfectly still. I was not alone in that house. I went back the next morning with a heavy flashlight and a kitchen knife that I held in my other hand with the full awareness that I would probably drop it the moment I needed it. It was 8 in the morning. Birds outside. Gray Ohio spring light coming through the windows. I told myself, broad daylight, neighborhood just waking up, you are a grown adult in your own house. I opened the panel fully. It swung inward smoothly on hidden hinges, well-maintained hinges I noticed, hinges that had been oiled recently enough that there was no creak, and revealed a space roughly 12 feet deep and about 10 feet wide. The room. A full room hidden behind the living room wall, accessible from this single concealed entrance. The ceiling was low, maybe 6.5 feet, and the walls were bare wood. The floor was wood planking, darker than the living room floor, with a narrow strip of rug, faded, reddish-brown, positioned in the center of the space. I stood in the entrance and swept the flashlight around without stepping in. My chest felt tight. Not with fear. Not yet, not exactly. With the specific dread of finding something you suspected was there. There was a shelf on the far wall. On the shelf, 3 cans of food, labels removed, lids dented but sealed. A plastic water bottle, half empty. A folded gray blanket. A small battery-powered lantern, the kind you find in camping supply stores, and when I looked at it, really looked at it, I could see that its power indicator was still glowing a faint green. Meaning it had been on recently. Meaning someone had turned it off. On the floor beside the shelf, a small pile of objects. A paperback book, its spine cracked from repeated reading. A torn piece of cardboard that, when I finally stepped close enough to see, had words scratched into it in pencil. Not words I could read immediately, small, cramped letters that I'd need to take to proper light to decipher. And beside the cardboard, a single item that made my breath stop entirely. My spare house key. The one I kept in the junk drawer in the kitchen. I did not touch anything. I stepped backward out of the room. I closed the panel. I stood in my living room with my back against the wall, the wrong wall, the ordinary wall, and I breathed in and out until my hands stopped shaking enough to hold the flashlight properly. Then I took out my phone and looked at the cardboard I'd photographed. The words scratched into it were a date and a count. Each day marked. 31 marks in 4 rows, the kind of tally you make when you're tracking time. The date beside it was the month I moved in. Someone had been in that room for at least a month. Someone had been in that room while I was sleeping 20 feet away. I called the police that afternoon. They came, 2 officers, professional, thorough. They went through the hidden room, the whole house, the yard, the basement. They found no one. They took the items for evidence, photographed the room, wrote a report. They told me that it was likely a trespasser who had found or duplicated a key at some point, that this kind of thing happened occasionally with older properties, that there was no immediate indication of threat. They asked if I wanted to stay somewhere else. I said no. That was a mistake. The first night after the police visit was completely quiet. I slept badly, but I slept. The second night was quiet. By the third night I had almost convinced myself it was over, that whoever it was had moved on, spooked by the police involvement. I changed all my locks. I installed a chain on the panel from the inside. I put a motion sensor light in the basement. I did everything reasonable and responsible. On the fourth night I was lying in bed just past midnight when I heard it. Not the vague breathing sound I'd grown used to, something sharper. A creak from inside the walls. Not the floor settling. Not the pipes. A single, deliberate creak like a shift of weight on wood. It came from the wall adjoining the hidden room. Then silence. Then, after maybe 40 seconds, another creak. Closer this time. I lay completely still. I want to be honest about what I felt. I was not brave. I was not ready. I was a person alone in a dark house listening to something move through its walls, and every instinct I had was telling me not to move, not to make a sound, to be smaller than I already was. The creaking stopped. I waited an hour before I moved. Then I turned on every light in the upstairs hallway and sat in the middle of the floor with my back against the bathroom door and my phone in my hand until daylight. I found something the next morning. In the kitchen, on the counter beside the coffee maker, were 3 items. A can of soup, the same brand as the ones in the hidden room, though those had been taken by the police, a pencil, and a folded piece of paper. I unfolded the paper with the tips of my fingers. It was blank. Just blank paper. But it had been folded deliberately, carefully, with precise creases. And it was warm the way paper is warm when it's been held. I shouldn't have opened it. Not the paper, the room. I shouldn't have opened the room. Because whatever understanding had existed before I found it, whatever arrangement had allowed me to live in ignorance on one side of a wall while something else lived on the other, that understanding was gone now. And something had changed in its absence. Things began to move more aggressively after that. Not dramatically, nothing thrown across rooms, no sudden violence. Just the kind of movement that makes you question your own memory. A glass that had been on the left side of the dish rack was on the right. A book on my nightstand was open to a page I hadn't read yet. My phone charger was unplugged from the wall, its end resting on the pillow beside me when I woke up, and I sleep alone and I live alone and no one had a key to my house anymore. The sounds from the walls became nightly. I tracked them. I drew a rough map of the first floor and marked where I heard the creaks with timestamps on my phone. The pattern disturbed me, the sounds moved. Not randomly. They moved methodically, as if something was traveling through the interior of the house, through the space between the walls, in a specific circuit. Kitchen wall, then hallway wall, then living room, then back to kitchen. Every night, between 11 and 2. I set up my laptop as a recording device, propped against the wall in the living room, and went to sleep upstairs. In the morning I reviewed the audio. For 3 hours and 40 minutes, nothing. Then at 1:17 a.m., a sound that I've listened to many times since and still can't fully describe. A low, sustained exhalation. Patient. Close to the microphone. Like something that had pressed its face to the wall and breathed out slowly. Then, after 8 seconds of silence, a sound that was almost a word. The audio was too muffled for me to be sure. I played it back 40 times. It might have been wind through a gap in the insulation. It might have been the house settling in a way that happened to sound like a voice. The rational explanation was still available to me at that point. I held onto it with both hands. My personal items continued to move. But now the pattern was different. Now things went missing for longer, a day, 2 days, 3 days, and came back changed in small ways. A photograph from my bedroom wall was returned with its frame slightly bent. A coffee mug I'd had since college came back from wherever it went with a thin scratch on its base, the kind of scratch you make when you drag something across a rough concrete surface. My jacket, my winter jacket hanging by the door, came back with its inside pocket pulled partially out as if someone had gone through it looking for something. I spent a night at Marcus's house. Just one night. When I came back the following evening, every cabinet in the kitchen was open. Every single one, including the high ones I needed a step stool to reach. Nothing was taken, nothing was damaged. Just open. All of them open in a way that felt, to me, less like a statement and more like evidence, like something showing me how thoroughly it understood the space it occupied. It knew my house better than I did. It had been there longer. I want to be clear about why I went back into the hidden room. It wasn't bravery. It wasn't curiosity. It was that the alternative, leaving, selling the house, walking away, felt like something worse than fear. It felt like defeat at the hands of something I didn't understand, and I have never in my life been able to make peace with that. I removed the chain I'd installed on the panel. This was at 9 p.m. on a Thursday, still fully light outside, the sounds of the neighborhood coming through the windows. I had a heavy flashlight. I had my phone with its camera running. I had a claw hammer in my right hand because it was the most substantial thing I could hold in one hand. I pressed the latch. The panel clicked open. The room looked different. Not dramatically different. The shelf was still there, now empty since the police had taken everything. The rug was still on the floor. The ceiling was still low and the walls were still bare wood. But the atmosphere of the room had changed in a way that I feel stupid trying to describe and yet cannot leave out. It felt occupied. The way a room feels when someone has just left it, not empty but recently inhabited. The air was warm. Warmer than the living room. Warmer than it should have been for a sealed interior space in an Ohio spring. I stepped inside fully. 3 steps in, 4 steps. I swept the flashlight into every corner. Nothing. No one. The room was empty. I stood in the center of the room on the faded rug and I listened. The house was quiet. The neighborhood sounds were muffled by the walls but still audible. A car passing. A dog. The distant compression of a truck on the highway. Normal sounds. Then I heard breathing. Very close. Not from the walls. Not from some distant part of the house. From the room. From the darkness at the far end of the room that my flashlight had already swept over and found empty. Slow, quiet breathing. Deliberate. The breathing of something that was choosing to let me hear it. I moved the flashlight back to that corner. Nothing. The corner was empty. The wall was bare wood. There was nothing there. The breathing continued. I have heard a lot of explanations for what happened next. Acoustics. Infrasound. Sleep deprivation causing auditory hallucinations even while awake. The house's ventilation system creating sounds that approximated human respiration. I've heard all of these explanations and I've turned them over carefully and I cannot make any of them fit what I experienced. Because what I experienced was this. The breathing stopped. And in the silence after it stopped, in the half second before I started backing toward the door, something moved in the corner where the breathing had been. Not a large movement. Not a dramatic movement. Just a very slight shift. The kind of shift you see in peripheral vision when something adjusts its position in darkness. A suggestion of movement rather than movement itself. A shape that was there and then was not there and yet had left behind the clear, undeniable impression of having been there. My flashlight flickered once. The battery was new. I had checked it that morning. I left the room. I left it quickly but I did not run. I closed the panel behind me. I stood in my living room with both hands on the wall, breathing. The house was quiet. The room behind me was quiet. Everything was quiet in that specific way that things go quiet when they are waiting for you to stop listening. That's when I realized something was wrong, not just with the house, not just with the room, but with my understanding of what I was dealing with. I had been thinking of this as an intruder problem. A trespasser who had found a clever hiding place. A human problem with a human solution. What I felt in that room, what the air of that room felt like, what the darkness in that corner implied, did not feel human. I'm not saying it was something supernatural. I am saying it was something I did not have the right framework to understand. I am saying that the space in that corner, after the movement, felt different from the way a space feels when it's empty. Heavier somehow. More present. Like the darkness itself had density, had intention, had been watching me from the moment I pressed that latch and chosen this moment, this specific moment, to let me know it had been watching all along. I left the house that night. I'm still not back. I have been staying with my sister in Columbus for the past 3 weeks, and I tell people it's because of a plumbing issue, and they believe me because people always believe the most reasonable explanation. The police followed up. They found traces of habitation, hair, skin cells, a partial footprint in dust near the back of the room. Human traces. They've opened an active investigation. They are confident they will find the person. They use the word person with the certainty of people who have not been in that room. Marcus went to check on the house for me last week. He texted me when he arrived and then again 2 hours later, saying everything looked fine. He didn't go into the room. I hadn't told him about it. I don't know why I didn't tell him about it. But here is what I think about, alone in my sister's guest room at 2 in the morning, when the sounds of her house settle into quiet. The night I went back into the room, the second time, the last time, I heard the breathing stop. And I saw the movement in the corner. And then I left and I closed the panel behind me and I stood in the living room with my back against the wall. And then I went to my bedroom and I packed a bag and I left. I never heard the panel open again. I never heard movement behind me on the stairs. But here is the thing. Here is the thing I have not told the police and have not told Marcus and have not told anyone until right now. When I packed my bag that night in my bedroom, moving quickly, hands unsteady, I noticed something on the bedroom floor that had not been there when I'd come upstairs. A single smudge in the dust near the baseboard. The kind of smudge you make when you press your back flat against a wall and shift your weight. The kind of mark something makes when it has been standing very still in a corner, watching, waiting to see what you'll do next. The smudge was fresh. It hadn't been there when I'd gone into the room. Meaning whatever had been in that corner when I'd entered the hidden room was not, at the moment I left, in the hidden room anymore. Meaning it had not stayed behind the panel. Meaning the panel, the lock, the chain, the concealment, had never been what was keeping it contained. Meaning the only thing that had ever kept it in that room was its own choice to be there. And that night, for whatever reason, because I'd found it, because I'd seen it, because something in what I'd done had changed the terms of whatever arrangement had existed before I bought that house. It had chosen to leave. I don't know where it is now. I don't know if it's still in the house. I don't know if it followed me here. I don't know, and I want you to understand that the not knowing is the worst part. Worse than the sounds, worse than the room, worse than the movement in the corner. Because if I knew where it was, I could be afraid of a specific place. I could watch a specific door. I could keep my eyes on a specific corner of a specific room and know that I was safe everywhere else. But I don't know where it is. And so every room for me is the room behind the wall now. Every dark corner has weight. Every sound from inside a wall is a breath I almost recognize. And every morning when I wake up, the first thing I do, before I check my phone, before I get up, before I do anything, is lie very still and listen for something that might be listening back. My security cameras started recording movement inside my house. But every time I checked, there was nothing there. Let me be clear about something before I get into this. I'm not a superstitious person. I don't believe in ghosts. I installed those cameras because my neighborhood had a string of break-ins last spring, 3 houses on my block in 6 weeks. I'm a data analyst. I believe in evidence. I believe in what I can measure, what I can see, what I can verify. That's exactly why what happened destroyed me. I bought a 4-camera system. 2 outside, 2 inside. 1 in the living room facing the front door. 1 in the kitchen hallway angled toward the back entrance. The app on my phone sent push notifications whenever the motion sensors triggered. Simple. Logical. A deterrent. I set everything up on a Friday night in late October. Did a few test walks in front of each camera, confirmed the footage was crisp and clear, and went to bed feeling safer than I had in months. The first notification came at 2:17 a.m. My phone buzzed on the nightstand and I grabbed it, heart already hammering before I was fully awake. The alert said, "Motion detected, living room." I opened the app, scrubbed back through the clip. The front door was closed. The room was dark except for the little green standby light on the cable box. I watched the full 60-second clip twice. Nothing moved. Not the curtains. Not a shadow. Nothing. I figured it was a glitch. A spider walking across the lens, maybe. Temperature fluctuation triggering the sensor. I'd read about that in the setup guide. I went back to sleep. The second notification came at 2:51 a.m. Motion detected, kitchen hallway. I watched the clip. Dark corridor. The night light near the baseboard cast a faint orange glow across the linoleum floor. So, completely still. 30 seconds of absolutely nothing. I put the phone face down and told myself I'd adjust the sensitivity settings in the morning. The third notification came at 3:14 a.m. Motion detected, living room. I almost didn't look. My thumb was over the dismiss button. But something made me open the clip. And I sat up in bed. The camera was pointed at the living room from the top corner of the room, near the ceiling, angled diagonally down. It captured the couch, the coffee table, the TV, the front door, and a sliver of the dining area to the left. Standard wide shot. There was something on the couch. Not sitting. Not a shape. It was more like a compression. One of the couch cushions, the middle one, was slightly indented. Like weight was pressing down on it. Like someone was sitting there in the dark. I stared at my phone for a full minute without breathing. Then I got up. I walked down the hallway, turned on every light I passed, and stepped into the living room. The couch cushions were flat. Perfectly, uniformly flat. Undisturbed. I pressed my hand into the middle cushion. Normal resistance. I checked the front door. Locked. Deadbolt, chain, all of it. I was alone. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat on that couch with every light in the house on and watched the camera feed on my phone until sunrise, and nothing happened. Not a single notification. Not a flicker. I spent the weekend going through every explanation I could think of. I googled camera motion sensor false positives. I read forum threads about app glitches and firmware bugs. I even called the customer support line and they walked me through recalibrating the sensitivity, bumping it down 2 levels so it wouldn't trigger on dust particles or ambient temperature changes. Problem solved, I told myself. Monday night I fell asleep on the couch watching TV. A bad habit. I woke up at some point in the darkness with the TV still on, some infomercial playing, and reached for my phone. 7 notifications. All between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., while I'd been asleep 6 feet away from the camera. I went through them in order, hands already shaking. 1 a.m. Nothing. Dark room. TV glow. 1:22 a.m. Nothing. Same shot. 1:47 a.m. The couch cushion again. That same slight compression in the middle. But I was on the other end of the couch. I could see my own feet in the corner of the frame. And there, 2 feet away from my sleeping body, that cushion was depressed. Something was sitting next to me while I slept. My stomach turned completely over. I watched the next clip. 2:03 a.m. The compression was gone. But now I was looking at the hallway entrance, the dark rectangle of open space leading toward the bedrooms, and there was something standing in it. Not clearly. Not obviously. It was the way the darkness was arranged. Slightly too thick in one vertical strip, like a shadow with no light source to justify it. A shape that was almost a silhouette if you looked at it directly, but seemed more defined when you let your eyes relax and look at it sideways. I watched that 16-second clip 11 times. By the 11th viewing I was certain. There was a figure standing in my hallway doorway. Tall. Facing the couch. Facing me. I called my sister that morning. Told her everything. She came over after work with her husband and they walked through every room, checked every closet, looked in the attic access panel. They went through the footage with me. Her husband, who is one of those loudly skeptical engineering type people, watched the hallway clip 3 times, adjusted his glasses, and said it was shadow compression from the TV light and I was pattern matching because I was scared. He might have been right. I wanted him to be right. He was not right. That Thursday at 3:33 a.m. I woke up to a single notification. Motion detected, kitchen hallway. I opened the clip. The hallway camera was angled toward the back door, but it also caught a partial view of the kitchen on the right side. In that sliver of visible kitchen I could see the edge of the island counter and past it the window above the sink. Standing in front of that window was a shape. This time it wasn't a maybe. This time it wasn't shadow compression or my tired eyes playing tricks. This was a silhouette. Human proportions. Slightly too tall. Thin. Standing completely still with its back to the camera, facing the window which looked out into a dark backyard. I did not get up. I want to be honest about that. I lay in my bed, phone gripped in both hands, and I did not move for 45 minutes. I watched the remaining notifications from that night. The shape appeared in the kitchen clip for 11 seconds total, across 2 separate clips, and then it was gone. In the morning I checked the kitchen. The window was locked. The back door was locked. The floor was clean. I started sleeping with a baseball bat next to my bed. I called a locksmith and had every lock in the house rekeyed. I bought a deadbolt for my bedroom door. I started leaving the lights on in the kitchen overnight. 4 or 5 nights, nothing. No notifications after midnight. No shapes. No compressed cushions. I started to breathe again. Night 6. I was in bed, bedroom door locked, lights on in the kitchen and hallway, baseball bat on the floor beside me. My phone was charging on the nightstand. I was almost asleep. The phone buzzed. Motion detected, living room. The timestamp was 3:33 a.m. Same as last time. I opened the clip. The living room looked normal. TV off now, I'd made a habit of turning it off. Couch cushions flat. Room dark except for the nightlight. But the camera was doing something wrong. There was a thin band of visual distortion cutting horizontally across the middle of the frame. Like a scan line. Like something interfering with the signal. I'd never seen it do that before. And then the distortion widened. Just slightly. For 2 or 3 seconds, the middle third of the image was corrupted, pixelated, scrambled. When it cleared, the couch cushion in the middle was compressed again. But this time there was something else. On the coffee table in front of the couch, something had been moved. I keep a small ceramic dish there for my keys. It sits in the same spot every day and has for 3 years. In this clip, after the distortion cleared, that dish had been moved 6 inches to the left. I know exactly where it was before because the distortion hit right at the moment it would have moved. I watched the before and after frame by frame. One frame, dish in the center. Distortion. Next clear frame, dish to the left. Something moved an object in my house at 3:33 a.m. while I was in a locked bedroom and every door was locked. I got up. I unlocked my bedroom door. I went to the living room. The dish was 6 inches to the left. I moved out 2 weeks later, staying with my sister. The house is listed for rent now and I haven't told the property manager any of this because I know how it sounds and I know what I believe and I know what the footage shows. I still have all the clips saved on a hard drive that I keep in my sister's garage. I haven't watched them again. I've thought about deleting them but I can't make myself do it. Evidence is evidence. The last notification I got from that house was the night I finished loading my car. I'd done a final walkthrough, confirmed everything was off, locked the front door and was standing at my car in the driveway. My phone buzzed. Motion detected, living room. I looked at the clip. The living room was empty. Completely empty. I'd taken everything. Bare floors, bare walls, all furniture removed. Just a vacant room. Except, in the corner of the room, in the top far corner near the ceiling, there was a shape. Small. Pressed into the corner the way a person would press into a corner if they were trying to fit into the smallest possible space, trying to stay out of sight. Looking directly into the camera. I drove away and I didn't look back and I have not gone back. But here's the thing I keep coming back to, the thing that won't let me sleep even now, 3 months later, living in my sister's guest room with the light on. The cameras detected motion. But I was never able to see anything in person no matter how fast I got there. Whatever it was, it existed in the footage. It existed where I wasn't. It only appeared when no human eyes were on the space. Which means either it knew exactly how to avoid being seen, or it only existed in the act of being recorded. And I don't know which of those is worse. This second story was sent to me by a viewer. I've spoken with him directly. I've seen the screenshots. I'm going to call him Daniel because he asked me not to use his real name, and honestly after hearing what he described, I completely understand why. Daniel bought a house in 2022. A renovation flip in a suburb outside of Columbus, Ohio. New drywall, new floors, new fixtures. The previous owner had completely gutted the interior down to the studs and rebuilt it. Brand new house inside an old shell. That detail matters later. He moved in alone. 31, newly divorced, fresh start. He set up a camera system similar to mine, app-based, motion-triggered, indoor and outdoor. He told me he wasn't particularly worried about security. He set them up mostly because he traveled for work and wanted to be able to check in remotely. The first 3 months were normal. Then in January he started noticing something odd about the footage. Not motion alerts, the footage itself. Specifically the frame rate. Consumer security cameras typically record at 30 frames per second. When you watch the footage back, movement looks fluid, natural. Daniel's cameras were set to 30 FPS. He'd confirmed it in the settings multiple times. But occasionally in certain clips the footage looked wrong. Not glitched, not distorted. Just slightly jerky. Like it had dropped to 15 or 20 frames per second for a few seconds and then returned to normal. Here's what bothered him. The dropped frame rate clips all occurred in the same room, the living room, and they always occurred between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. He contacted the camera manufacturer. They said frame rate drops could occur with inconsistent Wi-Fi signal. He checked his router. Signal was strong and stable throughout the house. He started downloading the raw video files and running them through editing software to analyze the actual frame rates. The clips were 30 FPS. Every single one of them. Even the ones that looked like they dropped to 15. When he analyzed the files technically, the data said 30 frames per second, uninterrupted. But watching them they looked wrong. Jerky. Like something was moving in a way that only appeared at a lower frame rate. Daniel sat with that for a long time. He's methodical like me. He didn't want to jump to conclusions. He came up with a theory, maybe there was something moving in the room that was synced to the frame rate. Something moving in pulses of 30 times per second increments that looked jerky because it was moving between frames rather than within them. I'll be honest, I didn't fully understand that when he explained it to me. He's an engineer and he went into more detail than I can relay. But the conclusion I understood. He was suggesting that whatever was moving in his living room between 2 and 4 a.m. was moving in a way that was calibrated to the camera's recording frequency. Like it had learned the rhythm of the technology watching it and had adapted to exist within the gaps. He started recording the room with his phone at the same time as the security camera. Holding his phone camera manually, recording simultaneously, to compare. The phone footage was different. Same room, same moment, different angle, but the phone footage showed nothing unusual. 30 frames per second of a normal, empty living room. The security camera footage recorded at the same instant showed the jerky between frame movement. He sent me a side-by-side comparison. I watched it 6 times. The phone footage is completely still. The security camera footage shows something in the lower left corner of the room, near the baseboard, that is moving. Small, rhythmic, jerky, but definitely moving. Some kind of regular, pulsing displacement of the image in that corner. He called an electrician. Then a pest control company who checked for animals in the walls. Then another electrician. No one found anything. The between-frame movement continued every night. In March, 2 months after he first noticed it, the movement changed. It was no longer staying in the lower left corner. It was moving toward the camera. Over the course of roughly 3 weeks, the jerky displacement in the corner got closer. Not dramatically, incrementally. Each night, a few inches closer to the center of the room. Daniel tracked it by its position relative to fixed objects in the frame. The leg of his coffee table, the edge of his area rug. By the end of March, it was in the middle of the room. He didn't sleep for 3 days. He stayed in a hotel and monitored the footage remotely. On the 3rd night, the security camera went offline at 2:14 a.m. Just shut off. The app showed the camera as unreachable. He drove back to the house at 3 a.m. to check. The camera was physically rotated. Not a lot, maybe 15 degrees. Still mounted on its bracket, not knocked down, not damaged. Just turned. Pointing at a slightly different angle than he'd set it. He told me that standing in his living room at 3 a.m., realizing something had physically rotated his camera, was the moment he understood that whatever was in his footage was also in his house. That the footage was a window, not a hallucination. He moved out the following week. He had the house inspected top to bottom before listing it. The inspection found nothing. In the disclosure paperwork, in the section asking about known defects, he left everything blank. He told me he still wakes up at 2:14 a.m. sometimes. He doesn't know why. He just does. This last one is the one that I've debated whether to include. I keep going back and forth. But if you've made it this far, you deserve the ending. Even if the ending is the worst one. This happened to me 4 days before I left the house. I was running on almost no sleep. I developed this compulsive habit of sitting up and watching the live camera feeds on my phone instead of sleeping. Not the recorded clips, the live feeds. I'd switch between them. Living room, kitchen, hallway. Over and over. Watching nothing happen in real time. I was in my bedroom, sitting up in bed with all the lights on. It was 2:40 in the morning. I was on the kitchen hallway feed, watching the empty orange-lit corridor, and I was so exhausted I was starting to see visual noise and everything. Fatigue, hallucinations. I knew that's what they were. I switched to the living room feed. The room was empty. Bare because I'd already started moving things out. Just the couch, the coffee table, the ceramic dish. I watched it for about 2 minutes. Then I switched back to the kitchen hallway. Then back to the living room. And I saw myself. I saw my bedroom doorway, which the living room camera partially captured, the dark rectangle leading to the hallway which led to the bedroom. And standing in that doorway, visible from behind, was a figure, wearing what I was wearing. Gray shirt, dark pajama pants. Same height, same posture, looking into the living room. I want to be very precise here because I've gone over this moment more times than I can count, and I want to describe it as accurately as possible. I was looking at my phone. On my phone, I was watching the live camera feed of my living room. In that feed, I could see my bedroom doorway. Standing in that doorway in the live feed was a figure that looked exactly like me, seen from behind. I was in my bedroom. I had not moved. I was sitting on my bed. I was watching myself in real time, standing in my own doorway. I could not move. I want to say I jumped up or screamed, but the truth is I completely froze. I stared at the phone for, I don't know how long. Maybe 30 seconds. Maybe less. The figure in the doorway didn't move. Just stood there, facing the empty living room. Then the feed went dark. Camera offline. I turned around. My bedroom doorway was behind me. Dark hallway beyond it. Empty. I turned my light off and on 3 times before I could get up. I checked every room. Every closet. Under both beds. Inside the shower. The attic panel in the hallway ceiling was undisturbed. I was alone. When the camera came back online 4 minutes later, the living room was empty and still. The ceramic dish was in the center of the table where it should be. I've thought about it from every angle. I've considered sleepwalking, though I have no history of it. I've considered that I briefly fell asleep and dreamed it, though the footage timestamp was real, the offline gap in the recording was real. I checked the logs. 4 minutes and 17 seconds of offline time, starting at 2:43 a.m. But here's the part one haven't told anyone yet. When I went back through the footage archive before I moved out, I found something in the clips from the first week I'd installed the cameras. Before any of this started. Before the compressed cushion, before the hallway shadow, before any notifications. 3 weeks before the first alert, in a 4 a.m. clip from the living room, there was a figure in my bedroom doorway. Standing exactly where I'd seen it that night on the live feed. It had been there from almost the beginning. I just hadn't reviewed the early footage carefully enough to see it. Which means it didn't arrive. It didn't move in while I was sleeping, didn't follow me home, didn't come through a door. It was already there. Waiting in the recordings. Waiting in the space between the camera and the screen. And it waited for 3 weeks, still impatient, before it decided to let me know it had been watching all along. I have one camera now. At my sister's house. In the guest room where I sleep because I couldn't make myself not have one. I've reviewed the footage every morning for 3 months. Every morning the room is empty. Every morning so far the room is empty. I tell myself that every night before I turn out the light. If your camera starts sending alerts you can't explain, I want you to think very carefully before you open that footage. Because once you see it, you will never be able to stop looking. And I'm not sure anymore whether we're watching these things or whether all along, they've just been using the cameras to watch us back.